Hi, my name is Claire Robertson-Kraft, and I'm a 2004 Houston Corps member. For the past 2 years, I've taught third grade at Windsor Village Elementary School in South Houston. I'm also a native Houstonian who grew up just about 15 miles from the school. My classroom has two big goals. The first is to get 2 years smarter in 1 year so that we can read like fifth graders. And the second is for 100% of our class to slay the tax monster, which is the high stakes reading and math exam given on the third grade level. As a teacher, I believe that investing students in goals means making them both understandable and meaningful for them. So at the beginning of the year, I sit down with each one of my kids and go over the beginning of the year diagnostic results. And as a partnership, we set long-term goals for fluency, for reading comprehension, and for math. Then on a weekly basis, I meet with each one of my kids to talk about how they feel our classroom activities are helping them to progress towards their goals. And then on a monthly basis, I sit down with each kid in a more formal setting and we look at how they've actually progressed towards their goal. And they're responsible for keeping track of their tracking themselves. So each one of my students has a red fluency folder, a reading objectives chart, and a math objectives chart. And when we sit down, they will actually document their progress towards their goal. And we'll have a conversation about what they need to do to ultimately continue to be successful in reaching their goal. And I think that by having my students be responsible for the tracking and having continuous conversations with them about what they need to do to be successful in reaching their goal, it really helps invest them in long-term product. Secondly, I think that it's really important to make academic goals meaningful for students in a real-world context. So every one of my students has a life goal that we set at the beginning of the year. Some of them want to be doctors, some of them want to be lawyers, some of them want to be basketball players. And we talk regularly as a class how regardless of what we want to do, academic learning in college is going to be a necessary part of that larger goal. And so I think even at the age of 8 and 9, children can begin to make the connections between what's happening in the classroom and what they ultimately want to do outside of the classroom. And I think that that helps to keep my students really invested in their goals. And my goal for myself as a teacher is that even when I'm gone, that these connections will still be meaningful for them and that ultimately will push them throughout their entire education all the way up through college so that they can achieve those goals. In terms of today's lesson, what you're going to see, the objective is that students will be able to apply their knowledge of geometric shapes in a real-world context. The reason that I chose to focus on this objective for today's lesson is because on Friday we took a snapshot on geometry where even though the students performed really well, but they all seemed to struggle with the same basic objective, which was how you can use your knowledge of geometry and apply it in a more real-world context. So in today's lesson, I've brought in some shapes from my home, and I'm going to walk students through how they can use the attributes that they already know to identify these three-dimensional shapes. And then I'm going to use an activity called a think, pair, share, where students will work with a partner to use their higher order thinking skills to find classroom objects around the classroom that are three-dimensional shapes. And then you'll catch a bit of the modeling section at the end of the lesson where students will start to sort different shapes that they have on their desk into categories. And I think you'll see throughout the whole lesson that what I try and do as a teacher is keep my students actively engaged, whether it be through call and response, through active questioning on both a higher and lower order thinking level.